You guys, hi, how are you? What is going on? This is the one I've been waiting for. I'm so excited to do what we're going to do right now. First off, thank you for being willing to follow me along on this thing and make the shapes that I keep asking you to make and making them better and cleaner and nicer. And hopefully you're at a point now where you're like, all right, I can make really nice pyramids, really nice cubes. I think realistically, we're not even going to focus on cubes right now. We're just going to stick with the pyramid forms. So this video is, I think, going to be in 3 parts. One part of the video, we're going to talk about how to lay out a base layer, which is the arrangement of parts you're going to put on the page. And I'll show you how to do that, and I'll show you some examples of what I have. The second part will be how to make the pyramid forms and how to vary them based on what you want to do. I'll go through a sort of practical way of making things that work. Then I imagine there will be a long time lapse of me cutting stuff out. I have already prepared in front of me about 36 sheets that I have to cut out. So that's going to take a while tonight. And then once we have those cut out and assembled, then basically we can merge those 2 parts and start to play with form, play with layout, play with design. We don't know what we're going to get at the end. What I like about this is it's basically it's play, it's experimentation. So let's begin. In the last video, we looked at some of Matchline's work, and I just want to review that real quick right now. What I want you to pay attention to, if you can follow my cursor, is look at the base shape of each object. So this whole thing is made up of L-shaped objects. But going back to this piece is made up of, that's a square and that's a rectangle. Rectangle, square, square, rectangle. And the rhythm is made up of just how those 2 forms interrelate with each other. This piece is all made up of squares. This is an 8x4 grid of square shapes. How the things get laid out on there is a different thing, but at its base, like if you squint your eyes, it's a 4x8 grid. When we zoom in on a piece like this is also a grid. Each of these is a square-based pyramid. That's an 8x8 grid. If you were looking at that without paper on there, it's just going to be a bunch of squares. It's going to be 8 wide by 8 high, a grid of squares, which might look something just like that. I mean, that's a 3x3. But the point is basically you lay out a grid, and then whatever comes up from there, that's up to you. So your plan is one part of the design. Your shapes are the other part of the design. How the 2 of those things interact with each other is the third part of the design. Since most of us have never done this before, I've never done this before, we don't know what we're going to get until we get what we get. So that's why I'm really interested. My goal tonight is I'm going to make a whole bunch of pieces and then play. It's like building blocks. Make your parts and then see how they look good. See what's interesting. See how maybe you need to make a change to do something else. And that's what we're going to explore in this video. When starting with the base plan, where I would start, and I'm no expert, but what I think makes the most sense is to define what shapes you want to use. That's where this sheet is really useful. This is the sheet that was in the first or second video. It's called Basic Shapes PDF. It's on PowerSchool. Just figure out what size you want to use. And constraints could be like how big a thing you want to make or how much paper you want to use. Or a lot of the demos we've done in class, I've been using the 2.5 inch square, 2.5 inch sides. But I think for today, I'm going to work in the 1.5 side. I think that will allow me to fit more things on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, which is super useful to me. Once we choose the size shapes we're using, it means that in a square, each side of the square is going to be 1.5 inches long. On an isosceles triangle, the base is 1.5 inches long. On an equilateral triangle, all 3 sides are 1.5 inches long. On a right triangle, the 2 legs are 1.5 inches long, and the hypotenuse is whatever it is, because math. If you're going to lay out your plan by hand, what I would do is take the sheet, print it out on cardstock, print it out on something heavier, and then cut these shapes out very carefully again, and these are going to become your tool set we use to do layout. These might appear small right now, but here's what matters right now. I think mostly we're going to be using the square and the equilateral triangle. What matters most is, do they line up perfectly? And they do. That's a good fit. That's what we care about. That's how we're going to lay everything out. The way I would proceed in terms of layout is maybe start with some scrap paper. Like, since we don't know exactly what we're doing yet, don't make it harder than it has to be. Try and experiment and play until you get something you like. Here is a scrap piece of paper. Here is my square. And then I'm just going to sort of start to play and see what kind of layout I want to do. If you wanted to do a grid, I think that would be as easy as, drawing out a grid. So maybe I'll start by drawing using a really sharp pencil point, draw a square, and then, so that's good. And then this is where I start to play. You know, what if we put a triangle on there and we line it up? The rule I want to set is I want you to make at least 16 shapes. I want you to make something that uses 16. I think that'd be good. What comes up from here, we don't know yet. We haven't made the shapes. So, you know, these could be cubes, these could be four-sided pyramids, they could be four-sided tapered pyramid, you know, they could be angled pyramids, they could be pyramids with flat tops. That's up to you in whatever shapes you want to make, and we'll talk about that in the next section. That's a sketch. If you like how that looks, tighten up the line to make it neater and cleaner. I would just emphasize, use a really sharp pencil point when you're tracing your tools. Just be really careful in your tracing. Keep your corners sharp. Keep your edges really clean. That's the basics of how I would lay it out on paper, and if you don't like that one, try another one. Let me show you the circular form in the computer. It would be the same thing, but I'll show you real quick how I would do that there. We're in AutoCAD now. That's the digital file I used to make this sheet. What we're going to do now, we're going to take the equilateral triangle and the 1.5 inch square, just like we did before. We're just going to drag them out to sort of a blank part of the screen. We can do the same thing in here that we just did on the paper. It's just, this is just how I would sort of play here. What I'd like to show you are a couple of shapes that I have made. So in terms of base plans, I made a grid of 9, I made a grid of 16. Same thing, just a perfect grid that we can lay pieces out on. I took that grid of 16 and I tried offsetting it, so each row is staggered by half. I actually have a print of the thing we just did in the computer, just so you can see tangibly what it looks like on paper. I also did a print of the one with the pyramids inside. I got a little Zelda inspired, and I was like, well, what if you liked the Triforce? You could lay that out, and that might be interesting. It might be boring. I don't know. And then I was just playing with hexagons and triangles and made this sort of like starogram thing. I don't know. Maybe it'd be ugly. Maybe it'd be awesome. I don't know yet because I haven't yet put things on here. But in terms of layout, that's where I would begin. I don't know more than what I've taught you right now because I haven't done this before. What I would love for you to do, though, design this. Design a couple. Take pictures of your base plans and then submit them however you're submitting for your class. If you're emailing them to the teacher, email them. If you're putting them on a wiki, put them on a wiki. Come up with a couple ideas. This is fun. This is just tracing shapes and seeing what you can do. Nothing is wrong because this is all new. So the goal now is I'm just going to make a bunch of different shapes and then put them on here and see what I can do. So let's get on to making some shapes. I'm hoping you're at the point where if I told you to make a four-sided pyramid, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's easy. So you would take this, lay it down, draw the sides. And now instead of putting one here on the side, you'd put it up there. That makes sense to you, right? So looking at this, we know we have the base, flap that we get glued inside, and then we need the flaps that we put on the bottom. So if any point of laying this out doesn't make sense to you, go back and watch the Pursuit of Perfection video because that pretty much shows you how we got from doing the initial one to here. If this makes sense to you, awesome, let's keep it going. What we know is this is going to make a cute little pyramid. But what if we wanted to change it? That's what I want to work on today. What if we wanted the pyramid to come up taller? I think the easiest way to do that would be like this. I would find the halfway point. 1/2 inch is 0.75. So make a little dot there. This is center line. So I just draw center line up higher. I'm just drawing a really light line now for reference. And then I do the same on the other axis. So now if we want to make a pyramid that comes up taller, we can bring these out as far as you want to go. Let's say we wanted to make, let's go up 3.5 inches. So I'm going to measure from 0 to 3.5, put a little dot right there, and then do it 3 more times. I didn't lay it out carefully on the paper. The point is, you know that if we fold it up, that'll still make a pyramid. But you also know it'll make an ugly pyramid. The way I would go is I would cut this off and put it up here to draw it more like... Right? Does that make sense? So cut that off, use that as a template, and draw them up here, just like we did on this side. To see that in practice, this is one I've done in AutoCAD. So this is basically this. I just want to make sure you know how we got here. So I drew it like that, and this is just a repeated form going across there. Does that make sense? Is that good? I hope so. If not, let me know. But what if you wanted to make a pyramid that tipped over? So we wanted to have a square base, but it comes up at an angle. That's harder, but let's figure it out. There are definitely mathy ways to do this, but I couldn't figure out any ways to do it quickly that would make it fluid for this process. I want to show you how I would do it practically. So let's start with that. What we're going to do is make a pyramid that tapers on 2 sides and doesn't taper on the other 2 sides. So we're going to carefully draw our square. We're still doing the 1.5 inch squares here. What we did last time, we measured out and then drew 2 lines down. What if this wasn't the point of the pyramid? What if we put the point of the pyramid over this way? So we know this is our center line, right? So what I want to do is move the center line over by about 1 inch. So I'm just going to lay this ruler on the center line and draw another line lightly. I'm just going to extend the square over so we can measure. Just watch this move. Okay. So now, how far do we want to go up? Let's measure up 3 inches, and then we're going to go over to that line. So basically, what I'm going to do is go here and measure up 3 inches. It's like calculating slope on a line. We've gone up 3 inches and over 1 inch. And then we did the same thing here. We've gone down 3 inches and over 1. This is going to become the apex. So we're going to draw the pyramid lines down from here. Okay, you see where this is going? So now when we fold these, those pieces are going to come up and be, well, let's cut it out. Let me show you what happens. I'll cut it out real quick. All right, excellent. If we fold it up, we'll get an angled pyramid. The place where it gets tricky is what happens here and here. And that's hard. So here's things we know mathematically. The length of what comes out here has to be the same length as that, because when that folds up, we know that that lines up to there. Drawing the side that comes up here, the length has to be the same as this so that they can meet up. And drawing the side that comes out here, the length has to be the same as this. So here's what I would do. A clean sheet of paper. We're making templates now. It's good. And now I want to find that center line again. All right, that's just a light line. And here's where it gets tricky. If we want to do the short side, we'll take the short side of the pyramid, this one, and so it's touching the line at the point, it's touching the line at the corner. Excellent. And then if you're a meticulous person, you can check your work on this side, spanning from the corner to the point. All right, that's good. So if we put it on the short side, it's perfect. And we want to do the same thing with the long side. To review, I'll do it a little bit faster. So I'm hoping that the logic of that makes sense to you. If it does, then let's take it to the next step and we'll array everything out from here. What we want to do is line edge 2 up with edge 1. That looks real good. Edge 4 up with edge 3. And they line up beautifully as well. And line edge 7 up with edge 8. So now, knowing what we've done before, yeah, we should be able to bend those around and make a really nice pyramid. Knowing what we need, I want to put an extra one of these over here so that it'll tuck under each other. This is our pattern now, right? So I'm going to put this down on a clean piece of paper, and I'm going to trace it really carefully. And that should be good enough, I think. Start by connecting the lines. And then we just need to copy this one over to there. And now you know, if we cut that out and fold along the lines, it should fold out and make a really beautiful pyramid. That's the whole process of how you could make pyramids that are different shapes and different angles and different leanings. It still has a 1 by 1.5 by 1.5 base, but this one leans. You could have ones that go straight up and down. Let me just show you what I've done in the computer now. I made regular pyramids that go straight up and down. Then I made a series that angle similar to the one we just did. They just go up a little bit taller. I also made a series of pyramids that have a square base, but they come to a flat top. I don't know, those should be kind of cool as well. So I made a bunch of these that I'm going to cut out. Like, what makes these different are these triangles here on the side. So that's different from that, different from that. Like, that's a right triangle, and this is an isosceles triangle. So there's going to be 4 different kinds of triangles that should hopefully go from straight up to tipped to more tipped to more tipped. So I'm hoping that we can get a sense of motion if we have a series of angles. So here's what's going to happen now. I am going to go and cut out maybe 20, I'm going to cut out and assemble maybe 24 shapes. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm going to end this and I'm going to start a time lapse running just so we can see what it looks like. And then I will see you back here when I have a pile of shapes that we can play with. Thank you for your patience. I hope this is enjoyable. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, you guys, I had sincerely hoped that at this point I could have a pile of parts that I could show you and we could do layout and we could start to play with that. It's pretty obvious we're going to need to make another video. I cut out a lot of things, a lot of things. I started a movie when I started cutting, and we're an hour and 46 minutes into it. So it took me about an hour and 46 minutes to cut out all of those things. I imagine it's going to take at least another 2 hours to fold them. So make some shapes. Make a lot of shapes. Make a lot of pieces. Yeah. Make a lot of things that are good. If I have to put a number on it, I would say make 16. I think I just made about 36 pieces that I'll fold into something. The upside of making extra is that it gives you room to play and you can try things in different orientations. So I would encourage you to make more. Once you create your own template, like I showed you, once you have that traced out on paper, you can put that on a copy machine and make all the copies you want. By drawing it in the computer, I just hit print over and over and over again, and it gives you the same thing repeatedly. Play with that. Play with forms. What I think I'll do is I'll put some of the PDFs that I've made on PowerSchool so you can play with those and then modify them in ways that you think are interesting. What I want you to work on right now, come up with a base plan or come up with a couple different plans, because those are fun and those are interesting. Then make a bunch of parts, and then next week we'll start to assemble these things and put them together in a way that's attractive. So make a bunch of parts, get it ready, put a movie on, and just listen to music, watch a movie, and just cut things out carefully. I'm going to go for now so I can get this edited and up to YouTube so you can watch it when you're watching it, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.